Good day, everyone. So now I will discuss to you our first topic for bookkeeping, the accounting overview. So the contents of this chapter is that first, we'll discuss the importance of records, the accounting definition, and we'll elaborate this. Next, the forms of business organization, the forms of business, the accounting assumptions, accounting process, the elements of financial statements, fundamentals of accounting, the accounting equation, and the financial statements. So first, for our introduction, so the human brain can store a huge amount of information. However, remembering all the day-to-day transactions would be very difficult. So as a result, written records must be kept to monitor all significant activities. So by keeping records, you will have the ability to assess which transactions provided income and which resulted to expense. So records are a compulsory requirement of the government for tax purposes. Next, let's define accounting. So according to the definition of accounting by the American Accounting Association, accounting is the process of identifying, measuring, and communicating economic information to permit informed judgment and decision by the users of the information. So when we say accounting, one of its process is to identify. So what do we identify in this process? So identifying is the recognition and non-recognition of business activities as accountable events. So pag sinabing mga business activities, ito yung mga nangyayari sa isang business. So hindi lahat ng activities sa business is nire-record natin. So, kailangan natin i-identify kung dapat ba siyang i-recognize or i-record sa libro or hindi. So, kailan natin masasabi na dapat i-record ang isang business activity or dapat i-recognize siya as an accountable event. So, kapag naapektuhan yung ating assets, liabilities, and equity, so, dun papasok yung i-recognize natin siya as accountable event. So, again, dapat yung ating business activity is merong value. So, one of the examples of this is sale of goods, purchase of assets, payment of expenses, and business activities that are not recognized as accountable events. So, example niyan is kapag nag-hire tayo ng employee. So, since wala naman tayong pinalabas na pera or anything na asset natin, so hindi siya maapektuhan, therefore hindi siya kailangang i-record. Another is kapag namatay yung owner or kapag nagkaroon tayo ng price inquiry or nag-place tayo ng order. So, since walang pumasok sa business and walang lumabas sa business, ibig sabihin hindi natin yun kailangan na i-record as accountable event. So next is the process of measuring. So measuring is the assigning of peso amounts to the accountable event. So again, dapat yung accountable events natin is meron siyang value para ma-record natin siya. So yung ginagamit natin dito sa Philippines is Philippine peso. Next is communicating. So it is the process of preparing and distributing accounting reports to the possible user. So dito na yung time na lahat ng na-record natin, isa-sum up natin yan and gagawa natin ng financial report. After natin magawa ng financial report, ipapakita natin dun sa may-ari ng business yung financial statement na na-prepare natin para makapag-decide siya kung ano yung gagawin niya sa business niya or makikita niya doon yung performance ng kanyang business kung lumalago ba yung business niya or nag-incur ba ng loss. Magkakaroon siya ngayon ng way to decide kung ipagpapatuloy niya ba yung business niya or i-improve ba niya or itatapusin niya na ba yung business. Next, we have here the forms of business organization. So first, we have is the single proprietorship. Ibig sabihin ng single proprietorship, isa lang yung may-ari ng business. For example, yung mga sari-sari store. iisang tao lang. So, as long as isang tao lang yung may-ari ng business, ang tawag sa kanya is single proprietorship. Next we have is the partnership. So, kapag sinabing partnership, two or more person bind themselves to contribute money aside sa money, property, or industry into a common fund with the purpose of dividing the profits among themselves. So, at the end of the year, kung magkano yung naging profit nila sa business, paghahatian nila yon as partners. So, depende kung ano yung napag-usapan nilang hatian. Next we have is the corporation. So, kapag sinabing corporation, it is an artificial being created by operation of law, having the rights of succession. So, again, si corporation is an artificial being. So, ibig sabihin, no, meron tayong dalawang klaseng person dito. We have the natural being and the artificial being. Pag sinabi nating natural being, yan yung tao, tayo mismo. Pero kapag sinabi nating artificial being, meron siyang personality, pero nire-recognize siya ng law as a person. Pwede siyang kasuhan, pwede siyang magkaso sa ibang business o sa tao. So, ganun. So, it is composed of 5 or more persons, itong corporation. After a year ng kanilang operations, hindi nila pinaghahatian yung profit nila. Instead, nagbibigay sila ng dividend sa kanilang mga investors. Next, we have the forms of business. So, the forms of business, we have the service provider. So, pag sinabi natin service provider, yung kanyang business is nagpa-provide ng service. Example, barbershop, mga salon, mga massage and spa, yung mga ganun. Yung mga ticketing business, yung mga advertisements. Ganun. Next, we have is the merchandising. So, sa merchandising, it involves buy and sell of product. So, bumibili ng produkto para i-benta. So, yung pinaka-basic example nito, yung mga sari-sari store, you have KCC, online selling, yung binibili nila yung product nila, tapos yun yung binibenta nila, pinapatungan nila yung kanilang nabiling product, tsaka nila ibibenta sa public. And then next, we have the manufacturing. So, pag sinabi natin manufacturing, sila mismo yung gumagawa ng kanilang produkto. From raw materials, they process it to become a finished product. So, example nga, yung mga factory, like Dole, mga canning corporation, yung sila mismo yung gumagawa ng kanilang products. Sa furniture, sila yung gumagawa ng lamesa, sila yung gumagawa ng mga cabinet. So, yun yung example ng manufacturing. So, dito iikot yung magiging exam or yung assessment ninyo sa bookkeeping. So, it could be a service provider, merchandising, or manufacturing. Next, we have the accounting assumption. So, itong mga accounting assumptions na to, kahit hindi siya sinabi sa problem, kung paano natin iti-treat yung isang problem, ito yung mga assumptions natin na sinusunod. So, based on the revised accounting framework, nag-iisa na lang itong ating assumption. It is the going concern. So, kapag sinabi natin going concern sa business, ina-assume natin na maglalast yung business. Going concern, continuous yung operation. Again, we assume na yung business is maglalast for a long period of time. Next, we have here the implicit assumptions. So, first, we have the accrual. So, under accrual, we have the income and expense. So, dito sa accrual, ang nangyayari dito, under income, nire-record natin yung income. Again, we recognize income the moment we earned it, regardless of when it is received. Ibig sabihin, nire-record natin yung income as income kapag na-earn na natin kahit hindi pa natin nare-receive yung bayad. For example, nagbenta tayo ng cellphone. Pinautang natin sa customer. So, ginamit niya na yung cellphone. The moment na matransfer yung ownership ng cellphone sa customer natin, ibig sabihin, nagkaroon na tayo ng income nun kahit na pinautang natin. O kahit na hindi pa tayo nakaka-receive ng payment. So, kapag ka na-transfer yung ownership ng cellphone sa customer, record agad tayo. Income. So, ganun yung assumption natin sa accrual. So, for expense, accrual expense naman, dito, we recognize expense when it is incurred regardless of when paid. So, sabi, yung expense nire-record natin kapag nagamit na natin siya, regardless kung hindi pa tayo nakapagbayad. So, one of the basic example of that is yung Socoteco. No? Kapag nakatanggap tayo ng bill ng Socoteco or yung kuryente or yung tubig natin, 'di ba? Kapag nakatanggap tayo ng bill, ibig sabihin nun, nagamit na natin yung kuryente or yung tubig. So, kapag nagamit na natin yun, ibig sabihin, expense na yun agad. So, kapag naka-receive tayo ng bill, record tayo agad ng expense kahit pa hindi pa natin bayad yung kuryente or yung tubig. Next is the accounting entity. So, dito sa accounting entity, ina-assume natin na yung business is separate siya from the owner. Kung meron mga transaction si owner, hindi natin pwedeng i-record sa business. Kung meron namang mga transaction si business, hindi natin pwedeng i-record sa ating personnel ng owner. So, dapat separate yan. Yan yung assumption natin. So, next is the time period. So, kapag sinabi natin time period, meron tayong assumption na sinusunod dito sa time period. So, usually, or yung accounting period na tinatawag natin is 1 year. So, it could be calendar year, fiscal year, or natural year. So, kapag sinabi natin calendar year, magsisimula yung business from January, mag-e-end siya at the end of the calendar. No? So, that is December 31. So, January 1 to December 31. So, kapag sinabi naman natin na fiscal year, nagsisimula any month of the year. So, for example, June 1 nag-start yung operations. Yung 1 year niya, May 31. Ano? So, from June 1 to May 31 of the next year. As long as 1 year period pa din. Or 12 months. Next is the monetary unit. So, dito sa monetary unit, yung in-impose dito is kung ano yung currency ng country na ginagawa natin ng financial statement is yun yung gagamitin natin. Kung nandito tayo sa Philippines, yung gagamitin natin is Philippine peso. Kung nandun tayo sa ibang lugar like US, yung gagamitin natin is US dollars. So, yun yung mga assumptions natin when it comes to accounting. Next is the accounting process. So, ito yung gagawin nyo, or ito yung pag-uusapan natin for the whole 3 months ng ating training sa bookkeeping. So, first, we have the analyzing. Next, after, hindi kasi kapag nagbasa tayo ng mga transactions, kapag nabasa na natin, hindi pwedeng magre-record tayo agad. So, i-analyze muna natin yan. So, again, no, balik tayo dun sa definition ng accounting. It is the process of identifying. So, i-identify muna natin kung yung business activity ba is an accountable event. So, before natin siya mai-record. So, yung next step natin is journalizing. So, dito sa journalizing, ito na yung time na magre-record tayo ng journal entry. And then, we have posting. After natin makapag-journalize, ipopost natin yan. So, mas maintindihan nyo yan sa mga later natin na discussion. Next, step 4, we have the adjusted trial balance. So, yung mga amounts na na-sum up natin from our posting or from our ledger is ginagawa natin ng trial balance. So, kapag sinabing trial balance, dapat balance yan. Balance yung debit at saka yung credit natin. Next, step 5, we have the adjusting entries. So, dito sa adjusting entries natin, no, kung meron tayong portion ng asset natin na na-incur na natin or nagamit na natin, yun, gumagawa tayo ng mga adjusting entries. Next step is preparation of financial statement. Meron tayong complete set nito later. Ipapakita natin dito sa ating presentation. After the FS preparation, we have the closing entries. So, yung mga kino-close natin, itong ginagawa natin ng closing entries are those temporary accounts. Kapag sinabing temporary accounts, yun yung mga accounts na makikita sa ating income statement. After the closing entries, we have the post-closing trial balance. Parang kamukha lang siya nitong unadjusted trial balance. And lastly, we have the reversing entries. So, reversing entries is optional. Depende sa atin kung gagawin natin siya or hindi. So, again, depende sa assessment kung hihingin siya sa atin as requirement. Next is the elements of financial statement. So, without this, hindi natin magagawa yung financial statement. So, dito sa elements of financial statement, meron tayong tinatawag na transactions. So, kapag sinabi natin transactions, ito yung exchange of economic value. Meron kang ibinigay, dapat meron ka ding ma-receive in return. So, ito yung mga elements na sinasabi ko. So, first we have is the liabilities. So, pag sinabing liabilities, ito yung mga resources controlled by the enterprise. So, again, ito yung mga pagmamay-ari ng business. Example nito, cash, receivables, inventory, pwede din mga property like land, building, equipment, and so on. Basta lahat ng pagmamay-ari or anything na binila ng business para pwedeng magamit ng business. Next we have is the liabilities. When we say liabilities, in simple term, it means an obligation or pagkakautang. So again, yung si business yung nangutang. So yun yung BCB ng liability. So example nito or yung tawag natin dito is yung mga accounts payable, notes payable, bank payable kung nangutang sa bangko. Ganon. So, these are present obligations. Next we have is the capital, or ang other term nito is equity, or ang other term is proprietorship. Magkapareho lang yan. Capital, equity, and proprietorship. So, ibig sabihin nitong capital, equity, or proprietorship, ito yung amount ng na-invest ng owner sa kanyang business. So, pwede itong capital na ito, or equity and proprietorship, pwede ito mag-change kapag nag-start ng operation. So, mag-change to kapag nagkaroon ng income, or kapag nagkaroon ng loss, or pwede din kung nagkaroon ng additional investment si owner, or kapag nag-withdraw siya from the business. Next we have is the drawings. So, ibig sabihin itong drawings, these are withdrawals made by the owner for personal use. So, pwede yon, no? Kapag meron tayong business, pwede natin hiramin muna yung pera ng business para gamitin natin for personal use. Example, hiramin ko muna yung 50 pesos ko sa capital ko kasi gagamitin ko pampaload for personal use. Okay, so pwede yon. So, ang effect nun, mababawasan yung ating capital ng 50 pesos. Kung magkano yung nahiram or kung magkano yung na-withdraw ng owner from the capital. Next we have is the income. So, kapag sinabing income, these are inflow of future economic benefits. So, kapag sinabing inflow, hindi lahat ng, pag sinabi natin inflow, yung pumapasok sa business. So, lahat ng pumapasok sa business are considered income except contribution or additional investment ng owners. Kasi nga, capital naman yun, hindi naman yun income. And the next we have is the expenses. So, the expenses are outflows or consumption of future economic benefits ng entity. So, lahat ng gastos ng business. Ang tawag natin dyan is expenses. So, except yung mga distribution of dividends or yung nag-withdraw ng pera from the business. Next is the fundamentals of accounting. So, in accounting, meron tayong tinatawag na double entry bookkeeping. So, kapag sinabing double entry, meron tayong debit and meron tayong credit. So, again, dapat before tayo makapag-record, dapat merong transaction. Again, yung kapag sinabi natin transaction, ito yung exchange of values. Meron tayong binigay and in return, dapat meron tayong ma-receive. So, kapag sinabi nating debit, ito yung value ng na-receive natin. Or yung value na pumasok sa ating business. Kapag sinabi naman nating credit, ito yung value parted with or yung value na lumabas sa business. So again, dapat balanse ito lagi, itong debit at saka credit. Kung magkano yung dinebit mo, dapat ganun din yung amount ng iyong credit. Next we have is the accounting equation. So this is our basic accounting equation. So we have assets is equal to liability plus equity. So ito lang yung tatandaan natin kapag nagko-compute tayo. Yung asset natin is equal to liability plus equity. So, paano naman kapag yung equity yung wala? So, equity is equal to asset less natin yung liability. Paano naman kung liability yung wala? So, liability is equal to asset less equity. So, pwede natin yan transform yung ating equation. So, we have here an example. Assume that Mr. CPA invested 50,000 cash as initial capital for an accounting service business called Accounting Services. So, the business also took charge of the 10,000 payable for the office equipment used in the business. Okay, so kung gagamitin natin yung ating basic accounting equation, meron tayong first, 50,000 cash as initial capital. So, ilalagay natin yung 50,000 sa capital or sa equity. Again, magkaparehas lang yan. Capital, equity, and proprietorship. So, 50,000 lagay natin dito. And then, yung ating liability, sabi dito, the business also took charge of the 10,000 payable for the office equipment. So, bumili ng equipment at nilagay sa business. So, si business yung nag-took charge ng liability kasi inutang yung office equipment. So, dito natin ilalagay yung 20,000 sa liability. So, kapag inad natin yan, yung total niyan is yung assets natin. So, 20,000 plus 50,000, that is 70,000 assets. Kung mapapansin natin, dapat balanse itong ating assets and yung ating liabilities plus equity. Next, we have is the financial statements. So, eto dapat kabisado nyo to kasi ito yung gagawin nyo sa assessment. Okay, so we have here the complete set of financial statements. First in line is the income statement. So, it shows the financial performance of the business. So, yung mga elements, again, kung maalala nyo yung mga elements na sinabi ko kanina, yung pinapakita dito sa income statement are those income and expenses. Again, sa income statement, income and expenses lang yung makikita dito. Next we have is the balance sheet. It shows the financial position or financial condition or the financial health of the business. So, ang makikita naman dito ng mga element are those assets, liabilities, and equity or capital or proprietorship. So, yung tatlo lang yun ang dapat makita sa balance sheet. Next is the statement of changes in equity. So, it shows the changes in the capital caused by additional investment, withdrawal, income, or loss. So, dito sa statement of changes in equity, syempre, kapag nag-invest si owner, pwede siyang magkaroon ng additional investment. So, mag-change talaga yung ating capital. Pwede din siyang mag-withdraw kapag gusto niyang hiramin yung pera for personal use. And then, kapag meron tayong income, ina-add natin yan sa ating capital, or kapag nagkaroon tayo ng loss, binabawas natin yan sa ating capital or equity. So, pinapakita yan dito sa ating statement of changes in equity. Next we have is the statement of cash flows. So, dito sa cash flows, it shows the inflow and outflow of cash. Pinapakita dito yung movement ng cash natin. Ano yung mga lumabas sa business na pera. Ano yung mga pumasok na pera sa business. Saan galing yun? Collection ba natin yun sa mga customer? Pambayad ba natin yun sa mga expenses? So, dito pinapakita sa statement of cash flows. And then lastly, we have the notes to financial statement. So, hindi na to masyado or hindi na to ginagawa sa assessment. So, again, it shows the summary of significant accounting policies and explanatory notes. So, i-disregard na natin to kasi nga hindi nyo naman to gagawin sa assessment. So, etong apat lang ang pinaka-importante na ating financial statements na gagawin. Next, okay. Lastly, we have this exercise. We have an exercise, the balancing of the accounting equation. So, So, let's read. At the beginning of the year, EFR company had total assets of 300,000 and total liabilities of 200,000. So by the end of the year, total equity increased by 50,000 while total liabilities decreased by 20,000. So yung question, how much is the total capital by the end of the year? Another question, how much is the total assets by the end of the year? So click here for the answer. So, kayo na mag-click niyan para makita nyo yung sagot sa ating exercise. So, again, thank you for watching. If you have questions, please feel free to drop your questions at our GC NC3 Bookkeeping. And don't forget to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Accountant Not an Expert. So, thank you and God bless you all.